They hear every little thing that you're saying,
Oh,
Martel.
okay.
Every
Well, hey,
last word
stop
that
looking
you're
at the comments
saying.
and engage. Talk to them.
I am talking.
Oh, look.
You got the filter on, dude.
I do. I still on.
Man, God, no.
You look cute with a filter.
No. See, that's the problem.
What's the problem?
The actions of Martel Holt, the reality TV personality you either love or hate, will astound you. Martel is, in fact, the epitome of marriage and love. His condition is getting worse every hour, according to doctors who hurried him to the intensive care unit in Huntsville. This is not just another health scare, I assure you. There is more to this story than meets the eye. What exactly transpired and why is this so shocking? I promise you that you won't want to miss this. You should stay with us as we delve deeply into the details.
I know that, I just know he's the one that's going to help me get over any foolishness or to start to satisfy my wife 100%,
Right.
to do what I'm supposed to do.
It's like devastating to me to think about my family being split. Why would I stoop so low and be so foolish to really risk my family multiple times?
Martel Holt, who's frequently in the news, has recently been battling serious health problems that started when he became ill. His personal life has been anything but tranquil due to his public divorce from Melody and the intermittent drama with Arionne and Curry. So at first he wrote off his symptoms as stress. The demands of being a reality TV star and ongoing family disputes have negatively impacted Martel's life. His body was telling him a different story, but at first he believed he could handle it. Despite his symptoms, which included exhaustion, coughing, and chest pain, Martel persisted in pushing through instead of seeking immediate medical attention. Only one night, when his condition deteriorated significantly, did things become really serious. Martel was quickly admitted to the intensive care unit after being taken to the hospital in the middle of the night. What specifically went wrong? The physicians started to worry about potential cardiac issues. No one knew what he was going through. Was all the stress getting to him? Was it a condition of the heart? Since the general public was unaware, the mystery only deepened. But this is where things become interesting. Martel's supporters were left in the dark. He had always kept up with his followers and posted frequently on social media, but all of a sudden, there were no more posts, no comments, and nothing. Supporters began to wonder what the real situation was because of the overwhelming silence. Was it worse than anyone had anticipated? Was Martel trying to conceal his illness? Things start to take a strange turn at this point. According to people close to Martel, there is more to his health problem than meets the eye. His mental health had deteriorated in addition to his physical health. You see, the drama with Melody, the strain in his relationships with his children, and the public scrutiny were starting to weigh heavily on him. It was no secret that Martel had been struggling with mental health issues, but it appeared that they were getting worse. It was more than just the weight of the glory, it was everything. This is now where it becomes quite startling. According to some insiders, Martel was genuinely attempting to downplay his situation. Why? Because Martel's public image had always been linked to his pride. A reality TV star was used to being in control of his story, but this health issue had put him in a predicament from which he was unable to escape. Was there more going on behind the scenes, or was he trying to keep his supporters from seeing how bad things had gotten? Behind the scenes, the family dynamics were also under test. Was Melody, his ex-wife, involved in his recovery? What about Arionne Curry? What was her reaction to this sudden shift in the situation?
I bet she is happy today, because I would be too.
People began to wonder how Martel's longtime mistress, who had always been a source of conflict in his life, would respond now that his health was deteriorating. Would she speak up and support him, or would she remain silent as she had in the past? More questions were raised by this silence. Martel had always been outspoken about his desire to restore his relationship with his kids. They were also feeling the strain of the situation and things were becoming difficult in his world. But now that his health was in danger, he had to face the harsh truth. According to close sources, his biggest regret during his time in the intensive care unit was not being able to be there for his kids more often. Where are we now? Our star is in danger of losing everything, including his health. There is speculation that Martel's family relationships may undergo a major shift as a result of this health scare. Will it bring about unexpected healing, or will it drive them farther apart? Even though we still have a lot to learn, we can be sure that this is just the beginning of the story. Follow along as we reveal even more twists and turns in this epic tale. Let's look more closely at what happened as Martel's condition continued to worsen, because it affected both his career and his family. The inquiries only mirrored the opinions of medical professionals regarding his condition. Was it a common health issue or something far more serious? The startling thing is that it may have taken weeks for Martel's health crisis to develop, and nobody truly realized how serious it had become until it was too late. This is not something you will believe. People were first confused as to what had sent Martel to the intensive care unit. Was it just tension? As we learned more, it became clear that Martel had been managing persistent symptoms for a while. Something darker had been weighing on her. However, he had brushed it off, believing it was simply the stress of his hectic life getting to him. He made an effort to ignore the exhaustion, chest pain, and breathing difficulties. He was already greatly impacted by the drama surrounding his affair with Arionne Curry, his tumultuous divorce from Melody, and the constant public scrutiny. Even though things were different this time, Martel felt he could handle it because he was Martel. Over the course of the days, his condition deteriorated. His breathing difficulties, chest aches, and unbearable fatigue all got worse. Martel was no longer able to ignore it. He was taken to the hospital in the middle of the night, where the doctors realized how serious the situation was. They began to suspect that Martel might be suffering from a serious cardiovascular issue because of something that had never been mentioned before. Could all the stress, years of public drama, and internal conflict have contributed to this health scare? The extent of the damage was unknown, but it appeared likely. In addition to Martel's heart, the doctors were concerned about his mental health, which had deteriorated significantly and was starting to affect his recuperation. Even when his life was falling apart behind the scenes, Martel has always made sure to project control and has never been shy about his public persona. But now he had to face a reality he could not escape. He was at risk and his health was failing. Here's the twist. His neglect of bettering his mental and physical state was beginning to show. Martel's physical condition was declining, but rumors emerged that his mental state had been a ticking time. Martel had been struggling with severe depression for months, maybe even years, according to close sources. He was in a vulnerable state as a result of his failing relationships with Melody, the fallout from his affair, and the ongoing public scrutiny. Even though he was trying to keep everything together, he was having difficulties behind the scenes. This is where the interesting part begins. Martel was not totally honest about the extent of his illness, according to some of his close friends. Was he attempting to maintain his reputation, or was he just too proud to admit how bad things had gotten? Whatever the reason, Martel had been ignoring his symptoms for too long, and when everything fell apart, not just his physical health, but his entire life suffered. This is where the shocking part occurs, though. Surprisingly, Martel's family had kept quiet about everything. What's causing the silence? Many were left wondering if this was a personal matter or if there was more going on than we could possibly know, because his family members were keeping quiet about his illness. Some eyebrows were raised at their silence. Could Martel and his family be at odds over unidentified issues? Silence speaks louder than words when you are a public figure like Martel, even though maintaining a low profile while ill is one thing. Arionne Curry, Martel's mistress, who had played a major role in the drama surrounding his life and had remained silent about his hospitalization, was one individual who was noticeably missing from the rumors. Was she keeping her distance because of the ongoing conflict with Martel's family, or was she honoring his right to privacy? The absence of official remarks only fueled speculation. Why the silence now, when Arionne had been outspoken about her previous relationship with Martel? More questions were raised by this silence. Had things changed behind closed doors, or was Arionne still a part of Martel's life? Supporters and critics alike were beginning to wonder if the drama surrounding their relationship had finally paid off. Is a gap between them ultimately being fueled by the mounting pressure that is being scrutinized by the public? If Martel had a serious medical emergency, where would Arionne fit into his life? As the days passed, it became clear that Martel's situation was more dire than anyone had initially thought. It was uncertain whether he would make it through this crisis because his health was in danger, but just as much as his body was having trouble, his mind was in turmoil. Although Martel had always cherished his strength and independence, he was forced to face the fact that he could no longer handle everything by himself while he lay in that hospital bed. In private, the burden of his past mistakes and the growing stress of his current situation were unbearable. Martel was beginning to believe that he might not make it through this. His thoughts were returning to the choices he had made throughout his life, the one that had led him to this precarious situation, his liaison with Arionne, the public response with Melody, and the unrelenting drama he had carried with him everywhere. Martel lay there, exhausted and weakened, unable to help himself as everything seemed to be coming back to him in a way he never would have thought possible. Was it all worthwhile though? But this is where things start to go horribly wrong. Despite his extreme physical and emotional pain, Martel appeared prepared to continue. Not at all. In fact, he appeared more determined than ever to put things right. He was motivated to fight harder by his children, the younger ones who were dependent on him. His thoughts were racing with ways to repair the damage he had caused, not only to his health, but also to the people he loved. It was no longer just about surviving, it was also about finding atonement in the days that followed. Unexpectedly, Martel made the decision to contact his ex-wife, Melody. In the midst of his crisis, Martel recognized that he wanted to make amends for both himself and their children. He knew that the wounds were still fresh and that there had been a huge gap between them. Both of them had made mistakes in their marriage, but Martel was starting to realize how much his actions had contributed to their downfall. Something had changed in him, even though he knew Melody had suffered and that his affair with Arionne had devastated her. He understood that in order to heal, he needed to begin by repairing his relationship with the woman he had once loved. As Martel began to come to terms with his health issues and the possibility of getting back together with Melody, things inside of him changed. He began reaching out to people he had cut off, including friends, family, and even former co-workers. He realized that he could no longer keep pushing people away, as if a switch had been turned off. He required assistance and reconciliation with those who had previously supported him. Was it too little too late though? He was starting to feel the weight of Arionne's silence. It was clear that something wasn't quite right because Martel hadn't heard from her in days. Had they finally reached the end of their relationship? He had been so preoccupied with his own issues that he had failed to notice their relationship. Was there something deeper going on here that Arionne didn't understand? Or was he just bored with the drama of the constant public scrutiny? The silence was nearly intolerable. Martel's heart ached from more than just the physical pain. She had supported him during some of his darkest moments, from the emotional turmoil of not knowing where he stood with Arionne. But now, she appeared to be slipping away. She put an end to him. Was she sick and weary of the apparent chaos that followed him everywhere? Uncertainty swirled through Martel's thoughts, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been lost. Then, something very unexpected happened. After learning of Martel's hospitalization, Arionne finally contacted him to inquire about his condition. The letters were brief and straightforward. It was enough, though, to make Martel's heart race for a moment. He allowed himself to think that there might be a chance for them to be healed and atoned for. However, it became clear as the conversation went on that things were more nuanced than they first appeared to be. Arionne spoke in a reserved manner, and Martel felt that she was concealing something that had hurt her as well. The constant emotional upheaval that had characterized their relationship and the lies she had told. Martel was aware that he had disappointed her on multiple occasions, and it now appeared as though he might be losing her permanently. Nevertheless, he made an effort to convey how much he wanted things to be right and how much he needed her in his life. However, Arionne questioned whether she would ever be able to trust him again. It was a struggle, but Martel's road to atonement was still being forged. Even though he had changed as a result of all the mistakes brought about by the betrayal and the lies, he was no longer the same man who had gone into that hospital room weeks earlier, consumed by his own self-destructive tendencies and pride. He now harbored a glimmer of hope and a strong desire to make amends for both himself and everyone he had wronged. He had a unique opportunity to reflect on his life during his stay in the hospital, and the lessons were challenging. However, he can't help but think of Melody and the family they used to have. Every moment he spent apart from her, every argument that drove them farther apart, haunted him. However, the children he had vowed to always protect and cherish had been caught in the middle of his mistakes. It was difficult at first because Melody was still hurt and carrying the burden of everything that had transpired between them, but Martel knew it was time to repair what had been damaged for their benefit. Martel merely expressed his sincere regret for all the pain he had caused without attempting to justify his actions. He didn't make an effort to explain. He just hoped that by demonstrating his willingness to change, they would begin to mend, even if it was just little by little. He was surprised by Melody. Although they had quiet moments together, she occasionally reacted thoughtfully, but candidly enough to give him hope that there might still be hope. With every conversation, they began to see the possibility of a new beginning, even though restoring trust was a gradual process. Rekindling their romance wasn't as important as restoring their mutual respect and, more importantly, being good parents to their kids. With Arionne, Martel was still making an effort. He knew he couldn't expect her to wait for him forever because she had always complicated his life with a mix of passion, love, and conflict, but he wasn't prepared to part with her. In an attempt to express his love and the necessity of having her in his future, he kept getting in touch with her. But ever cautious, contemplative Arionne paused. Martel was aware that their past had left them with too many scars to be healed quickly. He was willing to wait in the hopes that one day Arionne would notice his transformation, even if it meant remaining in the shadows for a while longer. But Martel changed in the days that followed. He realized that waiting for things to work themselves out was not an option. If he truly wanted a future with Arionne or with anyone, he had to demonstrate that he was someone worthy of their trust, someone willing to move past the past and toward the future. The journey was not just about mending things with Melody or regaining Arionne's affection. It was also about improving himself for his kids, himself, and everyone who had ever loved him. Martel experienced setbacks along the way and moments when he thought he would crumble under the weight of everything. The questions of whether he had waited too long and whether it was too late to atone, along with the uncertainty and anxiety, all came together at once. He realized for the first time in his life what was truly important, the people he loved and the effort required to earn their affection. The road was unclear, but he continued to press on. Finally, Martel's health began to improve and his life began to improve over time. One day at a time, the relationships he had broken up began to heal. The tension between him and Melody decreased. They discovered a new way to live together, but not as a couple, even though they would never be the same again. Regarding Arionne, Martel maintained the hope that she would eventually meet the man he had grown into, and perhaps they could start over as parents who could respect each other for the benefit of their kids. She had yet to respond. The path to atonement was his path, even though it wasn't easy or straightforward. Every step he took brought him one step closer to the man he wanted to be. He had learned firsthand that there was no way to change the past. However, they had the power to influence their own destiny. For the first time in a long time, Martel believed his future was worth fighting for. Martel realized that life had given him another chance one evening as he sat in his living room, watching his kids play and laugh. He was no longer the same man who had acted without thinking, hurt those he cared about, and seen everything fall apart before his very eyes.